guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I've had this video idea for quite a while, and I've actually seen a couple other people do it, and I'm really excited to do it. So I am going to be taking the best of Goodreads books and reading them and seeing if they truly are some of the best books of 2024. So if you're not on Goodreads or you don't know, every year for each genre, they have a bunch of books that I think are nominated by readers, I'm pretty sure, and then the readers vote on them, and there's a best book of each genre for the year. So I thought that I would read a few of those books today. So the first one that we are going to be reading is the best science fiction book. Now, I don't normally read science fiction, however, I have heard such good things about this book this year, and I've been wanting to read it, and it happened to be the best science fiction book, so I thought, why not? That's what we're gonna read. So if you were curious, the other books that got nominated were The Family Experiment, Annie Bot, Mercy of Gods, Orbital, The Stardust Grail, Extinction, Moon of the Turning, I Cheerfully Refuse, and a bunch of others. But those are like the top ones. But the one that won, and it got 78,459 votes, is The Ministry of Time by, is it Callie-Ann? I think it's Callie-Ann Bradley. And I've heard such good things about this one. It's like a time travel romance, sort of, but it's science fiction. There's a lot of like different genres I've heard kind of within this. So I'm very excited to see what it is all about. So I'm gonna start this book here in a little bit, and I'll kind of give you guys updates and my thoughts and everything. I thought it would be fun to start this video reading a genre that I don't normally read because it's the start of the new year, and who knows, maybe I'll find that I actually love science fiction. So yeah, let's go ahead and start reading The Ministry of Time. I have not really updated you guys since I started The Ministry of Time. I feel like I kind of had to like get into the book a little bit before I could really form my thoughts on it. I am currently on page 268 now. I actually have about like 60-ish pages left, so I think I might try and finish it tonight. I'm enjoying this story, and I think it is an interesting story, but the way it's being told is not my favorite. I feel like the writing is very clunky and just a little, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of metaphors and a lot of this like expressive language that she's using, but it almost feels out of place and it almost feels overdone, if that makes sense. So I don't know, it's good and I like the story, I think it's very interesting. Basically, it takes place in the UK, and the woman who is narrating it works for the government, and they come to her and they ask her to be a bridge. So basically they've gone back in time, taken 5 people from history, brought them into present day, and each one of them has a bridge who is supposed to help them kind of assimilate to today's culture. So the person that she is working with is from the early 1800s. He was like an explorer. There's been some really like funny parts. Genuinely, there are parts that have made me laugh out loud of like him coming into the 21st century and really understanding what's going on. So I found those parts interesting and the storyline's interesting, but now it's kind of taking this like turn of like almost a mystery-ish of like why the government's really doing this and is there something that they're hiding sort of thing. And I don't know, I'm not loving that part as much. I'm intrigued to see where it goes and kind of how it ends. But yeah, the writing is just like not my favorite. I like the story, but I just don't love the writing. So I will update you guys probably when I finish this to kind of give you my final thoughts. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, just based on the fact that it's science fiction and I'm not a huge science fiction reader, but I don't know that I'm like obsessed with it, you know? I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle right now. So I ended up finishing The Ministry of Time. It's actually been a few days since I finished it. I kind of had to sit on my thoughts with this book because I was thoroughly confused at the end, and I think that's sort of the intention, but I honestly, the last 50 pages, like did not know what was happening, and I even looked up summaries to be like, is that just me? A lot of people were very confused, so that did make me feel a little bit better that it's kind of like the ending is sort of up for interpretation. I enjoyed the storyline and I thought it was very interesting. I think I mentioned this earlier, but there was a lot of like funny parts of like these people from past timelines coming to present day, sort of understanding like how society and culture is today. But when it came to the actual like time travel and the details of that, I found it very confusing. And maybe that was just me. I was thinking too much into the time travel aspect, but I just did not enjoy that part. So I think overall I would give this one a 3-star. I don't think it was bad. I just don't think that it was necessarily for me. Also, the writing felt very like clunky, and it was like she almost put too many metaphors and stuff into it. And I feel like if the writing was a little bit more direct, then maybe I wouldn't be as confused, but maybe that was the intention. I don't know. But anyway, so ended up giving this one 3 stars. Also, I realized at the beginning of this video, I forgot to say all of the genres that I'm reading because I'm getting all of these from the Goodreads Reader's Choice, and there's like over 12 genres that readers can vote on. So I'm not reading all of those. I'm mostly just reading from either the genres that I read from, or in this case, I'd heard really good things about the Ministry of Time, so that's why I chose to read it, even though I don't normally read sci-fi. The other genres that I'm going to read are the fiction genre, the historical fiction genre, and then the mystery and thriller genre. The reason I'm not reading the romance is because the book that won is Funny Story, which I've already read. The book that won fantasy was Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune, which I've also already read. And then the book that won romantasy is House of Flame and Shadow, which is in a series, so I didn't want to get into that one. And then the other ones are just genres that I don't typically read from, so that is why I chose the ones that I did. So next up, we have the winner of the fiction genre, which is The Wedding People by Alison Espach, I think is how you say her last name. I'm really, really excited to read this book. I've heard incredible things about it. I feel like I'm gonna say that about all of these, but like obviously I've heard good things because they were all voted as like the top book of their genre. I'm very intrigued by the concept of this one. It's basically about this woman who goes to a wedding alone, and she doesn't know anyone at that wedding, and everyone just kind of assumes that she's a guest. I will say I have heard there are some pretty triggering topics at the beginning of this book, so definitely look up trigger warnings if you are wanting to read this. But yeah, I've heard it is heartwarming. I've heard people laugh, cry, all of that, so I'm very excited to read this. I've been wanting to read more just like general fiction. I feel like I read a lot of either fantasy or romance, and I don't read a lot of just straight literary fiction, so very excited to get into this one. Also, the cover of this is just beautiful and like immediately drew me in. So I'm gonna start reading that one, and then I will catch up with you guys in a little bit to kind of tell you more about the book and what my feelings are. So I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm actually kind of close to finishing it. I've just been like really immersed in this book and honestly like really wanting to pick it up when I'm not reading. So basically we have our main character Phoebe, and she goes to, I think it's somewhere in Rhode Island or something, somewhere in like the Northeast, and she has these plans for when she arrives at this hotel. Things have been going pretty poorly in her life, and she has these plans when she gets there, but there ends up being a wedding happening. The hotel was only supposed to be for guests staying at the wedding, but she got like the last room that was available, and she meets the bride and then starts meeting other people and kind of gets involved with all of these people in the wedding and starts to get involved in their lives. And you get flashbacks to her life and what she had going on and everything, and all of the things that like were going wrong in her life. Then you also have like the bride, who I really enjoyed when the bride and Phoebe like first kind of met and were like getting to know each other. I loved that part of the story so much. It was like genuinely funny. It was like making me laugh out loud because the bride was kind of just like venting about her life and like all these things going on because Phoebe was a stranger, and she was like, you know what, I have nothing to lose. The wedding is like a whole week-long event, so there's been a lot of different events going on. Phoebe has kind of started to join them in some of these events, and I just like really enjoyed this. This book kind of feels like a therapy session a little bit, so I will say if you're not in the mindset for that, like this is not a lighthearted book. I would say it's definitely much more serious. Like I said, there are some triggering topics, so like definitely check out trigger warnings. But there have been so many points in this book where I've read and I've been like, wow, that like hit me really hard, or like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things in different characters that I feel like I can relate to. There's certain aspects of Phoebe that I feel like I can relate to. There's certain aspects of Lila, the bride, that I feel like I can relate to. These are definitely very like fully fleshed out characters, which I'm really, really appreciating. You're really getting to learn so much about these characters, and I'm really enjoying it. One quote, I posted it on my Instagram story that I really, really loved, because another thing is Phoebe is a professor, an English professor, and she loves reading. And so she talks about reading a lot too, which I really enjoy. Anytime there's books talked about like in a book, like if someone is like in the bookish world, whether that's a professor or works for a publishing company, like I love it. I find it so entertaining because usually when they talk about books and reading, I can relate to it. And yes, sometimes she read too much. Sometimes she read books instead of living a life. But didn't that just mean that her life was about reading books? And honestly, relate to that so hard, because there are so many times where I'm like out at a social event and I'm like, honestly, I'd rather be home reading. And maybe that sounds bad, but like, it's true. A little less than 100 pages left, so I'm gonna try and finish this book tonight, but I am really thoroughly enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. I don't know why going into it, I just wasn't really sure like if it was gonna be a book for me, because I feel like literary fiction can kind of be hit or miss sometimes. But there's been a lot of like drama sort of that I've enjoyed, and it's kept it entertaining. But then, like I said, there's also been some like deep emotional parts. It kind of has felt like a therapy session in some aspects. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I'm gonna keep reading and I'll let you guys know when I finish it and kind of what my final thoughts are. But so far, it's going very well. Last night, I ended up finishing The Wedding People, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like the ending was pretty predictable. I kind of guessed maybe like halfway to 75% of the way through the book what was going to happen at the end, but that doesn't mean I didn't still really love it. I really loved the storytelling of this book. I thought it was very interesting. Overall, I really loved the story. There were some parts where it kind of would fall flat for me a little bit, or I feel like we would kind of fall into this lull a little bit, but I still found it very interesting. I liked how we kind of had a week-long story of the wedding and kind of this wedding week, but then you also get a little bit of flashbacks into Phoebe's life and things like that. I saw a review and I actually like really enjoyed it. I wish I still had it, but I saw a review on Goodreads and someone said this book is more about the journey than it is about the destination. And I feel like that is so true, because the ending of this book is a little bit predictable, but it's not about how the book ends. It's about how we get there and the relationships that develop between the characters. And I just really enjoyed that, and I liked the way that was said. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. I would highly recommend it. I don't know, was this a debut novel? I don't think so, but I would be intrigued to potentially read other stuff by this author. I really enjoyed the writing style. Now we are moving into the mystery thriller category, and I'm very excited because I've also heard a lot about this book, and this book was already one that I kind of had on my radar that I wanted to read. And so when it came up as the winner, I was like, this is perfect. And that is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is basically about a teenager that goes missing at a summer camp, but her family owns the summer camp, or owns the land that the summer camp is on. Her brother had gone missing in a very similar way 16 years prior. So you're kind of unearthing what happened to her, what happened to her brother, these connections that the different people have. I already started the audiobook. I decided to audiobook this one just because it is a part of the free Spotify audiobooks, and I've been really enjoying audiobooks more recently in the last few months than I used to think I was not an audiobook person, but I've come to realize I think I am. Just it has to be the right audiobook. But so far I'm really liking this one. I started it earlier today and I'm 9% into it. So I'm gonna continue listening to this while I kind of do some stuff around the house. I have to do dishes, make dinner, and then I'm gonna like sit down and crochet and stuff. So that's another reason I love audiobooks, is I can listen to them while I'm doing other things. Time that I wouldn't normally get like reading time in, I can get reading time in, which is great. So I'm gonna continue listening to this, but so far I am enjoying it. I like the narrator, which is a very good thing, because I feel like that's one thing, or one reason why I used to not like audiobooks as much, is because of the narrator. So I'm really enjoying the narrator in this one, which is definitely helping. Also, the story is very interesting because you have the camp counselor, Luis, is the one that finds Barbara missing. And so you have her, but then you also get this flashback to like a few months prior when the summer of this camp first started. Then kind of as I was just scrolling through the audiobook, I didn't want to look too much, but at some of the titles, you then get some more information on the brother and when he went missing. And yeah, so I'm very intrigued to see how this happens. I can already tell there's just stuff going on behind the scenes that I feel like is gonna come to light soon. Okay, I'm currently 54% of the way through the audiobook. I have 6 hours and 42 minutes left. This is a very long book. Like, I think it was almost 15 hours on the audiobook, and when I looked up the page count, it's like almost 500 pages, but I feel like it's very long for a mystery. This book seems more almost like it is a literary fiction book with an element of mystery, because I feel like we're getting so much detail on backstories and people and different storylines that don't seem like they're adding to the mystery. And who knows, maybe at the end when things get revealed, this stuff will have been important. But I feel like in a lot of mysteries I've read, you don't usually get backstories too much unless it's like a necessary backstory to the mystery. Otherwise, you don't really get too much about them. And I feel like we're getting a lot in here. So it's weird. It's definitely a mystery because it does have that mystery element, but it's very different than any mystery I've read. And I do find myself getting a little bit bored at times. I feel like typically with mystery thrillers, the best part about them is that they're fast paced and they keep you on your toes. And I feel like this is just a little slow and some parts seem dragged out. I'm definitely very interested to see how it all ends and like what exactly happened to the daughter and then also what happened to the son like 10 years prior. But I will say I feel like we're taking a very long time to get there. So last night I finished The God of the Woods and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. The twist at the end definitely got me for sure, and it wasn't what I thought was going to happen. Like I said earlier, I feel like we really took a long time to get there, and I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary information given, making it more like a literary fiction than a mystery, which is not bad. Like, it's not a bad thing that it was written like that, but I think because it's advertised as a mystery thriller, you're wanting more of that like on the edge of your seat, like need to flip the pages to figure out what's going to happen next. And I feel like I just wasn't getting that with this. So that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. Still good, still got me at the end, but just took a little bit too long to get there. So the next book that we have, and this is actually the last book of this vlog, and that is the book that won historical fiction. And so the book that we are reading for that is The Women by Kristen Hanna. I've only read one Kristen Hanna book. It was Firefly Lane, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Loved her writing so much, loved that story so much, and obviously I've heard incredible things about her, and I've been really wanting to read more books by her, so I was really excited that this one won because that means I get to read it. I was already wanting to read this book anyways, but I'm very excited to read it. And this one is set during the Vietnam War, and it is about a girl that goes to work in the Army Nurse Corps during the Vietnam War. I'm going to start this book now. I will let you guys know how it goes. It's a pretty hefty book, so I feel like this one might take me a while to get through. I'm only 50 pages into this book and I already started tearing up. I am immediately hooked. Like, I love the way Kristen Hanna writes. It is so fast paced. She gets you right into the story. Even though I can tell that this is still like very much just the beginning and we have a long way to go. Our main character, Frankie, just got to the hospital that she's gonna be working at in Vietnam. And the first like big group of soldiers that are injured came in, and this is kind of her first time like seeing everything and seeing the injuries and all of that. And I know that there's obviously a lot more of this book to go, but like the way Kristen Hanna just is able to hook you from the beginning, and I'm already like feeling for Frankie, and she's so overwhelmed and feels like she jumped in way too quickly and she's like, I'm not cut out for this, but you just feel for her and like, wow, I'm hooked. Guys, this book is so painful. Oh my God. So it's been like a day since I've updated you, but I'm on page 239 and Frankie is now home from war. She did 2 full years there and now she is back home and is kind of having to readjust to civilian life. And if you know anything about the Vietnam War, there was a lot of protesting against it in the US. A lot of people did not think that the US should be there. And so when she came home, she thought people were going to be celebrating her, being like, oh my God, you were at war, like you did this amazing thing. And instead, she's having a very different experience and a lot of hatred towards her. And then just found out something else. It's so crazy to me that with Kristen Hanna's books, you don't even realize how connected you are to the characters until like something bad happens. And then you're just like crying and you're like, I didn't even think that I was that connected. I feel like I like need a minute to process before I keep reading. It's so good though. Like, it is so good and moving and powerful, but hurts. It hurts a lot. I wanted to read some quotes though that I really like. This one is when she's heading home, and it says, "She joined the army to find her brother and found herself instead. In war, she found out who she really was and who she wanted to be. And as tired as she was of all the death and destruction, she was also more than a little afraid to go home. What would life look like stateside?" Guys, we're only halfway through this book. Like, what do you mean there is still more? I don't think I can handle more heartbreak and pain. We are down to just under 100 pages, I believe. Yes. And I had to stop reading this earlier multiple times because I was about to stop crying and I was literally in public. One of them, I was at lunch and I was like, I can't cry right now. And then I started reading it again on the bus. Almost started crying again, so I had to stop reading it. Like, this book is really taking an emotional toll on me, but like in the best way. Like, if you know me, all of my favorite books are like very emotional books that pack a punch, that make you cry. Like, for some reason, I love when a book makes me cry. I don't know what that is. I'm on page 374, so like I said, just a little under 100 pages. I'm going to finish this book tonight. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared. I knew the end of this book was going to be hard. Like 15 pages left to go. So I am back. It's actually the next day, even though I am in the exact same sweatshirt. Last night, I was truly so inconsolable reading this book that I could not even like sit here and explain to you how I felt or just give you any of my thoughts at the end of this book. So I was like, I need to come back the next day after I've processed everything. So I can very happily say that we found a 5-star. I adored this book so, so much. Like, absolutely loved it. The messages, the story. I love the way this story was told, and I love how realistic it was about the Vietnam War and how people felt about it. Like, at the beginning, it was an honor and it was, you know, going to fight for your country. But then over time, as more information came out about the war, people started protesting it. And it was also really interesting seeing that from the perspective of Frankie, who was a nurse in the war. And so, you know, being involved in the war, she had kind of differing opinions than the general US public, but she also knew a lot more about what was going on. And then just seeing her kind of transformation of her opinions on the war, I think was really interesting. Vietnam War is not something I know a ton about, so this was definitely interesting for me to just learn about that in general. But then on top of that, you have the actual storyline of her and her struggles and everything she went through, coming back home, struggling immensely with PTSD and all of that. And then of course, the overarching topic of being a woman, especially a woman during this time, and being a woman in this war and not being recognized and people not taking your trauma and everything that happened to you seriously. It was just a very beautiful, powerful, moving book that I loved so, so much. So with that being said, this is the end of this video. I really enjoyed doing this and reading what readers voted as the best books of 2024. I will definitely say that I agree on the women, even though I haven't really read any of the other historical fictions, but like I can see why this was so very highly rated. The Wedding People also really enjoyed. The Ministry of Time and The God of the Woods were like mid for me. Again, books that if you're into those genres, I would recommend, but not necessarily my personal favorites, but I still enjoyed reading them. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.